he and the board at the time really saw the potential for printmaking to serve the mission by amplifying Native artists in a way that individual pieces couldn't.
Hello, print friends, and welcome. This is a bilingual podcast, so if you subscribe to us, you'll be getting episodes in English with me, as well as in Spanish with Reynaldo Gil Zambrano. Together we speak to people around the globe about their practice and passions in the field of print media and multiples. This episode is brought to you by Legion Paper. Legion Paper is a fine art paper company that represents the best papers in the world. They either stock it, source it, or make it with brands like Stonehenge, Somerset, Coventry, Reeves, Arches, and more. Legion is the best paper resource for every artist and printmaker's needs. Learn more about the variety of papers Legion stocks at www.legionpaper.com. My guest this week is Phinney Brown, the Executive Director of the Crow Shadow Institute for the Arts. We talk about Crow Shadow's printmaking residencies, which are rooted in inviting Indigenous artists from diverse disciplines to come explore the fine art of printmaking, often for the first time. We also talk about the significance of the institution's location on the Umatilla Reservation in Oregon, and looking towards the future as she shares her plans to expand their printmaking program while staying true to their community-based mission. Hi, Phinney. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm really excited to talk to you. I have known Crow Shadow for a really long time. As we talked about before, I have even spoken with a previous director of Crow Shadow so early on in my podcasting days, long before I knew anything about what I was doing. And so much has changed in the 6 years, I'm sure for almost 7 years now. For me and for Crow Shadow, the world has changed. We have gone through a pandemic. The institution I know has gone through changes. You are at the helm now. And so I'm just really delighted to revisit this incredible institution with my better sound equipment and my better interviewing skills, and to just caught up on an incredible part of our print world. Yeah,
thank you. I really appreciate it.
So I'd love to just start with my introduction questions. So please let people know who you are, where you are, what you do.
All right. I am Phinney Brown. I am the Executive Director of Crow Shadow Institute of the Arts. I've been there about a year and a half. Prior to that, I was at an organization that was trying to build a performing arts center in a mid-sized town in Washington state. I've been doing nonprofit work for a while now. I started out actually in a nonprofit wine kind of industry role. It was an interesting wine interpretive center for Washington, because Washington has a lot of wine and agriculture and all of that. But I came from Oregon originally. I was actually born in Hermiston, which is about 35 miles or so away from Pendleton. So it all came full circle. Okay. I live in Richland, Washington. I drive about 80 miles each way every day to get to work in Pendleton.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I mean, it's nice if you put on a podcast or something like that. The drive goes pretty quick. It's all freeway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's me.
Amazing. And you said that you grew up quite close to Pendleton. What role did art play in that part of your life?
Sure, yeah. When I was a kid, I actually feel like art has always been a really big thing for me. I gravitated toward the performing arts. I was a singer and I was in theater, and I was actually on a true crime TV show once, which was a fun experience. It's a little weird to see that episode sometimes and see myself. But yeah, and I like to draw and paint, and I do traditional native beadwork. I've recently taken up fine art framing and building my own frame molding. So I just really enjoy doing kind of creative hands-on things, and always have.
Yeah, absolutely. And truly, framing is its own art form, honestly. There's way more to it, and finding the frame that fits the piece and getting everything accurate. And yeah, it's its own world. Yeah. When I'm doing studio visits with artists before a show, and anyone is ever feeling nervous about a piece, I'm always like, baby, don't worry. Just wait till you see it in a frame. You know,
Right.
like
No, it changes it a lot. It's funny. I
it
actually
changes it.
learned framing for, yeah, for Crow's Shadow because we had to frame some things and it was during an employee kind of transition time and who knew what was just up in the air. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll just learn this. And I did.
I feel like that is such the role of a director in an arts institution, having done that role many
Hmm.
times, where you just look
Right.
around and you're like, "It is me. I am the
Hmm.
person. I am the only one standing in front of this task. Let's get the leveler out."
Yeah, you might notice there's some paint in my hair because I was painting the gallery today. It's a little of everything. I feel like that
Yeah,
it's never a dull moment as an executive director of a nonprofit in the arts.
totally. And so, how did you end up coming to Crow Shadow? You said you've been there a year and a half. Did you know about it before you saw the job listing? I'm sure, like being from the area, and it's has a big cultural presence. And then, what kind of
Mhm.
brought you there?
Yeah. What's funny is I didn't know about Crow's Shadow prior to finding the job posting and to applying. And it was this crazy revelation when I saw this posting for this job. I was like, "What? There is a fine arts institution this close to me and I never knew about it," especially growing up there. As I've worked there longer, I've realized that's not that unusual. So people in Pendleton, some people do know about us, but I think we have a better national presence and
Mm.
kind of statewide presence than we do actually local and regional. So I'm not surprised now, but I was like, how did this stay a secret forever? Like when I first found it. But yeah, no, I just ran across the job posting. I was like, this sounds like the perfect like thing for me. Just something that it really just spoke to me. I've always been a big fan of, I didn't really know what fine art printmaking was
Mhm.
exactly. Like I'd heard of it, but it wasn't like, I didn't really know at the time. But I have always loved printed things and paper and printers. And I had in high school, I worked in like a commercial print shop for a little while and I really enjoyed that. And I also did some graphic design for a little like t shirt shop that a friend of mine had. And so just printing, it sounded amazing. And then the traditional arts aspect, since I am a bead worker and I make moccasins badly, but I make them. And I'm a Coeur d'Alene tribe descendant. So my dad's enrolled. I'm not, but I am a descendant and I am pretty connected to that part of my heritage and my family. And so I don't know, it just seemed like a really great opportunity. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I'll apply. I'll see what happens. But yeah, here I am. Like I found myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you tried your hand at printmaking since coming to the institute?
So I've done a lot of observing
Mhm.
and I did a little so our she was our assistant, but she's since moved on, but she's come back to train our new studio assistant. Her name's a printer named Maggie Middleton. She's a Tamarind trained printer. She did a little photo litho demo with me and our studio assistant and walked us through the whole process. And I was a little afraid to try some things. It's a little intimidating, like starting out with some like litho demo as your first printing
Oh, yeah.
experience. But yeah,
Well, and
but no,
like,
it's amazing.
photolitho at that, right?
Yeah, but it was great. And I love watching it done. And I love how any printers we have in the shop they'll answer your questions and tell you what they're doing and why and how that works. And I just think it's such a cool medium. And I really love the technical and artistic aspects of it. You don't get a lot of things that really bridge both. So yeah, I'd love to
Yeah.
try it at some point. But it's intimidating.
Yeah, you sound a lot like me as a arts administrator, non-printer myself. When people ask me that question, I'm like, "I made a lino cut once. Don't
Right.
don't bully me. Can
Yeah.
I just be a fangirl?" Yeah, and as I've mentioned before, we've had someone on from Crow's Shadow, but where we got into a lot of the history, but I would love to just hear you tell that story, and for people who haven't got a chance to listen to that episode, it's deep in the
Yeah.
archive of just from your storytelling. It's founded in 1992. It's survived and thrived for over 3 decades. How did it begin? What was the foundation of that?
Yeah. So we're actually still in the same building we started in 30 years ago or almost 35 years ago at this point. It was founded by two artists, James Lavador and Philip Kesh. They both had studios in it's actually the old Catholic mission day school on the reservation. and it wasn't being used at the time. It had been decommissioned or whatever. And they had studio space there, and they would just get in these deep conversations about the need for arts access and just arts opportunities on the reservation for Native people, and kind of the creativity that they knew of there on the reservation, and how they needed a conduit to the mainstream art world, really. And so
Yeah.
they conceived of this, and then they started getting it off the ground. And I believe Philip went away to school. And then so it was mostly James Lavador that started it. But then Philip later came back, and he's actually still on our board, which is awesome. And he just did a residency with us, which is
Oh,
great.
wow.
We're about to release some of his work from that residency. But they got it started, and then I think a few years later, Jim was working with printmakers. He just kind of fell into printmaking through different residencies he was invited to. And I think he had a residency at Tamarind. And he and the board at the time really saw the potential for printmaking to serve the mission by amplifying Native artists in a way that individual pieces couldn't. You can make one pair of earrings, but and one person can have those, or you can make one
Hmm.
basket or one painting. But when you print something, you can have 25 of them. It can be on 25 walls in homes and institutions and galleries all over the place. So that's really where the printmaking part took off, when they realized that since the mission is to get work out there for Native artists, that's one of the best ways to do that. But it's always had a community element as well. There's always been the traditional arts workshops. And we actually have a relatively new traditional arts director. She's been there about 2 years. And she has really expanded the number of workshops that we do. We have lots of people coming through our doors and learning about basket weaving and beadwork. And we actually did an iPad art class, which was traditional arts. I don't know if it really falls into that, but it was really like a fun workshop, just something different to get maybe a different group of people in there and expose them to
Yeah.
what we're doing.
And it's a real tool that contemporary artists use all the time now in their art making. Definitely not a fringe way to even create preliminary drawings at this point.
Yeah, actually, the instructor for that workshop was one of our resident artists from the year prior. His name's Alex Kajana, and he did a residency with us in late 2023, I think. And then he came back and did that class. So it's really great to have that bridge sometimes between the two programs, the printmaking and the
Mhm.
traditional arts. I know years ago, Wendy Red Star did a class, like she taught a workshop while she was working in the print studio as well. So
Oh,
it's
that would
kind of
have been
nice to be able to
wonderful.
have that. Yeah, it's mostly stayed the same, while also grown a lot in over the 30 some years. It's funny, like I think that they just discovered what worked really early on. So this kind of two-pronged, like traditional arts, printmaking, and stuck with it. But it's been just from there, everything's just gotten bigger, and we're still kind of growing and changing and doing it through printmaking and traditional workshops.
Yeah. And so how does the institute sort of balance that dual role between fine art, print studio, and a cultural space rooted in these indigenous traditions?
Yeah, it's it doesn't I think the only thing that can be a problem sometimes is space, because we're still in a fairly
Mm.
small space. There's not a ton of overlap, I think, in the people that participate in traditional arts and also engage with our printmaking program and our prints that we have available. But there's some. But we do artist receptions for our artists in residence in the printmaking program, and we do see some people who come to our classes show up to those. And so there is some, I just think, general engagement across both programs. Something that I think a lot of people don't realize, though, is that our workshops are open to everybody. We get that question a lot. Is it just for tribal
Mm.
members? And since we're a 501c3, we're not a tribal organization, but I think people don't quite realize that. There is definitely room to get people who are only engaged with one part of what we do to engage with the other. And yeah, and we just keep doing our thing, and eventually we'll run out of space and need a new building and have to, we're almost
Yeah.
there. And so we are that's in the plans, maybe in the next, I don't know, few years, but not something we're actively doing right this minute. But yeah, and I think it's a good problem though that we have too much going on and there's just things happening all the time.
And how does Crow Shadow approach collaborative printmaking, particularly if an artist is new to the medium? Because that's one of the great things about collaborative printmaking, right? Is that you can bring someone in who maybe they've only painted, maybe they've only done film, maybe they've only done ceramics or basket weaving, and then they get to come in and they get to experience this entirely new medium. And of course, have a printer walk them through it and then have this original multiple on the other side. But I'm sure after, as we've said, over 3 decades, that there's an approach now that is can happen within the Crow Shadow way.
We actually rarely work with artists who are already printmakers. There's been a few, but it's mostly artists who aren't, or they have very limited experience with print. So I think there's always that element of newness and not really knowing exactly what's going to happen. But it depends on the printmaker. The specifics, I think, really do, because we're actually in a transition period right now. We had our previous master printer has moved on, and we have our interim master printer, which is Alyssa Ebinger, who you have interviewed
Yes.
relatively recently. And
Alumna
then
of the
we've also
show.
had a
Yeah.
couple. Yeah. No, she's so great. And she's such a talented printer and such a great person. And yeah, I just love getting the opportunity to work with her. But we've also had Maggie Middleton has been there. And then Austin Armstrong's another printer we've been working with recently. And the three of them all seem to approach it very differently. But there are some things that are the same, like contact with the artist prior to arriving seems to be very important to really just kind of talk it through, help them feel comfortable, and to get some ideas out there in the universe before they get started. Our last residency of last year was with a sculptor. His name's Ivan Carmona, and he had never done any kind of printmaking. And so it was really interesting to see him work through that process of like, how do I take these three-dimensional ideas and make them two-dimensional? And then to watch the printmaker, who it was Austin at the time, he helping guide him to it without telling him like exactly what to do. And they ended
Mm.
up doing some really creative like embossing with copper wire from Home Depot and some really like fun kind of new things. And it was really great to see that process and how like a person who was so unfamiliar with the medium kind of warm up and start to get like comfortable with it and start to really throw his ideas out there. And I think by the end, he was a printmaker. He was a totally old hat
Yeah.
for him at that point.
Totally.
But yeah, and I think that just the collaborative process is so fun to observe. And the printmaker makes a huge difference in what happens with the artist.
I would imagine too, a lot of it might be around building trust, right? Because if an artist is used
Hmm.
to being, I do the creation with my own hand, there's such a degree of agency in that. I do every stitch, every pinch myself. And then to hand it over to someone who you've really just met with the understanding that your name is going to go on this on the other side, I
Yeah.
feel like that's got to be a huge part of it.
Yeah, I think that is a huge element. And we have fairly short residencies. It's only 2 weeks. All of that time really needs to be used to be in the creative process. So it really, like, printers who work with us have to be able to establish that trust really quickly. And
Yeah.
I think that it's definitely a skill. Like, I imagine you could be the greatest printer in the world, and if you can't get somebody to like really trust you and understand that you're going to help, like you're there to help them kind of get their vision out there, then it wouldn't be very productive. But we've been lucky in having very talented and very like patient and Alyssa's a former teacher. So,
Uh
like,
huh.
I can definitely see some of that former, like, high school teacher come out in her when she's first
Just,
getting
yeah,
started a little bit, but I think it helps. Just
for
being
sure.
authoritative without being, like, overbearing or pushy, I think is it's a learned skill, and it's an important one.
Absolutely. And I think so they're only there for 2 weeks. Over that
Mhm.
time, are you aiming to create the whole edition or just get a BAT and then they come back and sign the edition? What can you get done in that time period?
Yeah, so usually we're just trying to get a couple BATs, sometimes one actually, if it's like one piece might be all we work on. And then sometimes we'll have somebody who does three different lithos that are then approved to print. And then we've also had some monoprint, monotyping during that time. Depends a lot on the artist and what they're up for. We just did
Hmm.
a residency with Frank Buffalo Hyde, and he got through, I think, the litho that he was working on in the first week. And so he spent the whole second week monotyping. So we're going to have some fun monotypes to release of his. But yeah, so we want to get at least one piece,
Hmm.
but it can be quite a few depending on the artist. And we've had some artists who have just done monoprints. They've just done it like a monoprint series or two rather than doing a full, like an editioned work.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like it's a lot of meeting the artist where they're at and, what do they really feel moved to do in that setting? Yeah. And so speaking of the setting, so you are located on the Umatilla Indian Reservation. How
Mhm.
does that atmosphere influence the kind of stories that are told through the prints that get made?
Yeah, I think that it's really important that we're in that location. It's such a different, just like a different kind of removed space from, I think, what people spend most of their time in. Because we're not only on the reservation, we're actually at the outskirts of it. So it's even a bit remote for the reservation. So being able to just be away from everything and be surrounded by the foothills of the Blue Mountains and then the wheat fields and all of that is just, I imagine that it inspires people a lot when they're
Yeah.
staying there for a residency. I know, like, the first few times I was driving out there, especially when it was just getting cold and there was like snow on the mountains, it was just this beautiful, like,
Yeah.
thing. If I was a good enough artist to capture that, I absolutely would want to. So I think that our location really does play a lot into what the artists produce when they're there.
Yeah, I grew up in Western Washington, but I know the Eastern Washington, Eastern Oregon area really well just because it's the near my original home, and it really is a stunning part of the world that I think
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily get enough credit for how beautiful it is. The sort of Western Washington, Western Oregon, because they have the alpine lakes and the volcanoes that tends to get a lot of the fanfare. But the other
Yeah.
half of both those states, the open space, the long view to the mountains, it's really incredible. And then the way the seasons affect it. The western part of the
Hmm.
state does not have the same seasons because it's in that sort of rain shadow with the mountains. It's very the same. I used to say growing up in the Seattle area that you really had the same weather from October to May. Like, you would
Yeah.
really not
Right.
you'd have this same experience. It would be drizzly, and it would be about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and that was all you would experience, but the openness of that part of the world and the changing of the seasons, it's really stunning, and it's a totally different experience, yeah. So I had asked you how the setting affects what happens at Crow's Shadow, but what about the other way around? How does the Institute impact the local community culturally or economically or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Pendleton, I think, is a surprisingly artsy little town for its size. It's mostly known for the roundup, the rodeo, but
Mhm.
there's quite a few just arts opportunities and organizations in Pendleton that it's really just a good little arts community. And I think that Crow's Shadow is for the tribal community, it's definitely an important space for learning and passing on traditions and just coming into community together and doing these things that people may not otherwise have an opportunity to learn. And so it's definitely a community space. But I think it's also aspirational in some ways, being this fine art institution in a little town that, like, not a ton of places that are in a place with a population of less than 20,000 people have work in the Smithsonian or Yale or Vassar, like all
Yeah.
these different places, and or have worked with artists who are at the Venice Biennale. And it's so it is it brings the outside art world to Pendleton and to the tribal community in a way that I think the founders, they probably didn't even imagine it being quite as successful at that as it has been, even though that was one of their goals in the beginning. So, yeah, like we're really happy to be able to bring that to the community.
That's beautiful. And yeah, that idea of working with these artists from all over, these really high profile artists, how does Crow Shadow ensure that the prints that get produced are reaching that broader audience, are ending up in these collections? Do you do mailing lists? Do you do fairs? Like, because as you said, it does have even maybe a stronger national reputation than local. And I've definitely seen that through other arts organizations. I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico for a long time, and you'd be surprised how many people who'd never heard of Landfall Press who are in that part of
Yeah,
the world. But then you go to New York City and you say you're from that part of the world, and people are like, oh my gosh, Landfall Press is there. So it
right.
really is, it has that kind of funny irony. But yeah, how do you get that broader audience to see the amazing work that's happening?
Yeah, so we do have a mailing list. And having been around for as long as we have, we've managed to just establish some really good relationships with our collectors and institutions. And we go to the Portland Fine Print Fair every year. But we recently, so this year, for the first time, we went out to the Brooklyn Fine Art Print Fair, which was a brand new event. And that was a really great experience because we got to meet a lot of those people on that side of the country that maybe we never actually had the opportunity to meet in person before. So I think that we have a network, we have a mailing list, we have a bunch of like loyal collectors and supporters and people who know who we are and follow us. But we also try to reach new audiences because I think that you always have to grow it. Like you always have to get new people engaged. We do the kind of classic social media thing and try to just help people discover us in any ways that we can. We'll do some community like booths, and we recently did. So I live in Richland, Washington, which is I told you it's about 80 miles away, and our development director is from Pasco, Washington. So we both drive in every day, but nobody in that area, which is Tri-Cities, Washington, it's Richland, Pasco, Kennewick. They don't they didn't know who we were at all. So we actually started partnering with some wineries in the Tri-Cities area to host little pop-up fine art and wine shows. And so that kind of thing, just trying to be there to answer questions and to really show people that this is here. And
Yeah.
yeah. And I think
That's a
that,
powerful thing to if people won't come to the art, bring the art to the people. I think it's
right.
something that happens more and is more effective, particularly as we come to understand the perceived and actual barriers of people, I think, to enter spaces that are conceived of as fine art spaces. Yeah.
And we're not in a storefront on a street with any foot traffic or anything. So it can be, I think, a little extra difficult for us to engage with people who might not know who we are because they can't just wander by and look in the window and see something they like and step in because we're way out in the middle of nowhere. But we do get visitors, but usually they're people who knew about us, who came out there intentionally because they wanted to come to Crow Shadow. So trying to get people to come see us and come engage with us who have never been on the reservation can be a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, the world has changed much. And between when I first had a representative of Crow Shadow on and now, what did Crow Shadow do through the pandemic? I know that was before your time, but just out of curiosity, were you sending plates out? Did you just stop production for a while? How did it evolve and be able to survive through that period when you couldn't, or maybe not as easily, bring people into the studio?
Yeah, from what I understand, we had artists in the studio. They just kept it small, and it was the artist and the printmaker and maybe the executive director occasionally, and they still ran residencies and still printed work, and everybody had to test for COVID like weekly or whatever
Yep.
and
Yep.
just make sure they were being safe. And I think, though, in a print studio, especially a litho focused print studio, people are used to safety protocols. and
Mm.
meticulous detail. And so those kinds of procedures, I think, maybe aren't as much of an intrusion on people who are used to that sort of precision and procedure and safety
Being
protocol
careful.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, it seemed and I think that during the pandemic, people realized when they were sitting at home that their walls were really bare. And so art sales and donations really picked up during that time too.
I remember that was a bit of a golden era for the commercial art world, I think really unexpectedly. I think people originally thought, "Oh, no, people are gonna be feeling so conservative, they're gonna be worried, they're not gonna wanna
Mhm.
spend," but really you they were home, they were looking at their empty walls or art that they feel like they've outgrown in some way. And then they weren't spending money on going out to dinner or,
Mhm.
dropping $200 at the mall just because they wandered in to see a movie and decided to go into the New Balance store too. I mean, all that kind of
Yeah.
almost subconscious leakage of funds that happens just from going into the world wasn't happening. And
Right.
it really was a great time. And I'm so happy that it turned out that way because I think a lot of people had a lot of fear that it would be the shuttering of a few longstanding
Mhm.
institutions, but luckily it went the other way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, yeah, that's probably something you could never foresee. Like,
Yeah.
I when you think about it logically, you think people would be worried about the future and holding on to their money but actually I think that's the first time I bought an original painting from somebody who wasn't local. Like it was just
Uh-huh.
I was on this social distance powwow group, which was a native kind of arts and culture group on Facebook. And I found an artist who, like, I just loved his work and I finally bought one. And that was the first time I had done that too. So I was part of that, I guess, those art
Yeah.
buyers during the pandemic. Right.
Yeah. And I think that art is soothing. And I think there was so
Mhm.
much anxiety and boredom. And I think that is such a horrible combination, like
Right.
anxiousness and fear and boredom. And so I think that people were probably also looking to be and were soothed by bringing new things into their space that move them and that let them feel something other than the anxiousness of the present moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Crow Shadow has worked with really big name artists, as you mentioned. You mentioned Wendy Redstar. I know Joe Fenderson has been through. How do you select artists? Are they coming to you? Are you sending invitations? How far ahead do you plan to get to work with some of these really rock stars?
Yeah. People, we just try to catch them when they're not busy. It's so hard to do because you just keep asking because at some point they might have a break in their schedule. But we actually, so we don't do applications or a call for anything. It's all just by invitation. But it's mostly through just a committee of interested folks who want to, but it'll be board members, staff, just some of our wider circle that is our artist selection committee. And we just pool our collective knowledge and suggest artists and reach out to them and gauge interest and try to, get people to come work with us. And sometimes it happens really quickly. Like we just finished a residency with Frank Buffalo Hyde that took about a month to put together. Like
Wow.
he was connected to us through one of our board members, and then I just asked him if he would be interested in coming out for a residency, and he said yes, and then it just happened. But then there are some artists that it can take years to really coordinate that and find a time that works for them and for us to come out and work with us. So it depends on the artist and it depends on schedules, and we try to do a mix of well-known and emerging artists because
Yeah.
part of our mission is to help newer artists really get their work out there and kind of learn the process of being an artist professionally. And so we try to do some people who are more new in their career and just starting out, and then maybe a couple artists who are more established. But it doesn't always shake out that way. I think we've actually had some relatively established artists this year where all of our residencies were front loaded into the beginning of the year. So next week we're starting our last residency of the year with Ryan Fedderson. So that's going to be That's going to be really fun. But then we'll just be editioning things all the rest of the year. But yeah, and then sometimes it's really spread out, and the variety of artists we get is pretty wide. And we try to get people from different mediums who have very different styles and
Mm.
represent just different parts of contemporary Native art.
Yeah, yeah. And how many artists do you have in the studio at once? Is it just one and one, or do you sometimes have two and you actually get some cross pollination between a more established artist and an emerging artist?
Yeah. It's just one, but that's actually
Mm.
an interesting idea. I think it might be hard for one printer to manage.
Yeah.
So maybe if we had another printer come out and help out, that could be a fun, like, dual residency or something, and maybe some collaborative work. I know in the past there had been some pieces that were done collaboratively with the artist in residence and with Jim Lavador when he was more
Mm.
involved in the organization.
Yeah, that could be such a beautiful space for that sort of mentorship and, as you said, collaboration, because the print shop is where people meet and talk, and there's this downtime, and there's this sense of moving towards a common goal, and the
Mhm.
drama of the first proof. There's something sort of magic about the social stew that happens in a print
Yeah.
shop that I
Yeah.
think really leads to people being open. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have more than one press. So if we had more than one printer, I think it'd be totally possible. I
Yeah.
actually found out recently that our older press that we have belonged to June Wayne
Oh my
from
gosh.
Tamarind. It was her press. I didn't know that. And then this guy who apparently had worked at Crow Shadow back at the beginning brought a tour through on at the Brooklyn Fine Art Print Fair. And he stopped by and he was like, "Oh, tell us about your press." And I had no idea what he was talking about. And then so he told me the history behind it. And I was like, "What? That's just super cool, like, history to be able to
Yeah,
print on."
what a pedigree for a litho press.
Yeah. Yeah. And it still works
That's
great. And we still use it actively.
I'm sure when
Still
they're made,
going.
they'll just last you as long as they're being used. That's one of the things that people, when they ask, I don't know much about printing presses, but that's one of the things I always say is that they want to be used.
Yeah.
That's how they stay healthy. Is as long as they're in use, you can keep them going for a long time, which is so beautiful. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, looking ahead, what are your goals for expanding Crow Shadow and the impact on the contemporary art world, on Indigenous arts? You mentioned the dream of moving to a larger space at some point, but
Mhm.
maybe in terms of the even just the cultural presence of what Crow Shadow is doing.
Yeah. So right now, we're in the process of looking for our permanent printmaker because we have our interim printmaker right now who I really wish Alyssa would come work for us, but she lives in New York City and we're not in New York City right now. But I think that I want to have whoever fills that role have a big, like, a big role in shaping kind of what that looks like going forward. Because the master printer is not just a printer; they're also like we're a small team, so it's very much a leadership role, and they'll shape the studio and kind of the direction of the studio quite a bit. We know for sure that we want a purpose-built space and we want it to be on the reservation. So we don't want to
Mhm.
take it somewhere else because I think we're just so rooted in that spot that we are just trying to build the foundation for that at this point, trying to bring in more supporters and kind of diversify our revenue streams, which doesn't sound very romantic. It's
But
very
it's real. It's real. It's how print shops
sciencey, but
survive
yeah.
too.
And there's a few things we lost, I think, over the pandemic that we'd like to bring back. Community education. In the printmaking side of things, we used to do printmaking workshops for adults and for the high school students on the reservation at the tribal school. So that's something we would like to do again once we have somebody permanently in Pendleton in the master printer role. But yeah, it's all just building our capacity and really streamlining what we do well and what we've been doing for so long and making it possible to build this new kind of purpose-built space that really serves our needs and serves as an inspiration for others. I think maybe many years down in the future, I would love to see other Crow's Shadow type organizations pop up in rural spaces on reservations, and everybody should have that access to art and art making materials. And when do you get like a chance to learn to do lithography? Or you just don't. It's such a hard to find resource. I guess the resources you need for that are so difficult to come by that I think that having more availability just generally would be, I would think of that as succeeding in our mission.
Totally. Man, that's such a beautiful idea because as we've spoken to that power of the multiple and the power of print, and if part of what Crow Shadow wants to do is to be that educator and to be that force for people understanding the vibrance and the complexity and the aliveness of Indigenous art and makers. As you said, the fact that it
Hmm.
can be in 25 homes, the fact that a piece could be in the Library of Congress and in a permanent collection of a museum and in an important collector's home and in like my home all at the same time and touching all these
Yeah.
different parts of the art ecosystem to really claim that space. It was like a physical art object that's so powerful. And then that idea that if there could be others around the United States or in Canada, that could be pretty incredible. Is a something that truly
Hmm.
creates a platform to get work out into the world. Yeah.
I think people don't, when people think of native, say, when people think of native art, they tend to think of it as like a thing of the past. And I just, I wish more people knew just how many contemporary artists there are who are native, who are just working in contemporary print or doing really innovative, cool new things that still tell native stories. And that's just something that we want to get out there and get in front of people and just expose people to, so that they don't, when they think of native art, they don't just think of baskets and beadwork, and all of that are very important. And all of those traditional arts are the foundation for, I think, even what contemporary artists are doing now. But we're still making art and we're still innovating, and it's still relevant and available and something to engage with.
That was something I came across a bit doing art history in I went to University of Arizona, so I was in the Southwest where there's a lot of Indigenous art,
Yeah.
both historical and contemporary, and working in art sectors there. I would come across that misconception a lot. We would be talking about something and people would be like, "Wait,
Hmm.
are there contemporary Native artists?" Yes.
Yes, there are.
Many. Yeah.
Many of them, actually.
Yeah, yeah, and but it's of course just like a lack of education, and places like Crow Shadow are so beautiful and important in pushing back against that harmful narrative that it's that Indigenous culture isn't still alive and thriving and evolving and responding and continuing to make art in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any dream artist that you would love to see come through who's just like a wave your magic wand and we've never had them yet, but I would love to invite them?
I think that somebody that Crow Shadow's been trying to get for a while is Nicholas Gallanin. I think he's been invited, and I don't know how much conversations happened in the past, but we would really love to, to work with him and have him out for a residency. So I'll keep trying there. But we'll see. If you're
Yeah.
listening, Nicholas Gallanin, we want
Yeah.
you.
If anyone has
um,
Nicholas's ear and likes lithography, you can be
um,
influential in making this happen.
yeah, he's somebody. I think Rachel Martin is somebody that we had invited, and she actually was going to be part of this year's lineup, but then her schedule didn't work and it just fell through. So I would love to have her in there, and we would love to have some people back who've worked with us in the past.
Mm.
Jeffrey Gibson now is a different artist than he was
Yeah,
when
yeah,
Jeffrey
yeah.
Gibson came and worked with us many years ago. And some of these artists that have moved on to just larger careers and have really grown their practice and all of that, it would be so great to have them come back and see what comes of a residency now, where versus what had been done in the past. I love Sarah Seastream's work. She was an artist in residence with us, I think 2013 or something like that, and I'm trying to get her to come out again. I think the list is huge. It's like people we've worked with, people we haven't. It's just, there's an endless number of contemporary Native artists who I would love to put in front of a press and see what happens.
No, it's a good problem to have, definitely. That abundance of
Yeah.
talent and things to dream about of what they could create with Crow Shadow. Where can people find Crow Shadow? Where can they support Crow Shadow? Where can they see work in person? Where can they buy prints?
Yeah. So our website is a great place for all of those except seeing it in person. That's crowsshadow.org. All one word, Crow's Shadow. And we also are on Instagram and Facebook. And our work is we loan out our permanent collection to many different institutions. So our work, you can find us all over. We try to keep that, we try to update on our social media, like when somebody's showing something of ours. So there's lots of opportunities to see work in person. But I would really encourage people to actually come out to Pendleton, about 15 miles or so, 15 minutes or so east of Pendleton, and come see us in our space, in our studio. And I'll give you a special kind of walk through the flat files, and we can pull out some fun older work and do a VIP tour, because we don't see enough people in there. I would love to. There's some days when I'm like, I just want to talk to somebody and show them what we have.
Just want to show this stuff off. Yeah, that makes total sense. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me this evening. It's been wonderful to revisit Crow Shadow and just get excited all over again about what a treasure it is in our contemporary print world and in the contemporary art world. So really excited to see what comes next.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. This is one of my favorite podcasts, so I was a little bit nervous to be on here, but I'm really glad that we got to chat. Yeah. Thanks so much.
If you liked today's episode, we do have a Patreon where you can support this podcast and get bonus content, like Shop Talk Shorts with past guests. But the best thing you can do is rate, review, follow, and share with your fellow print friends around the world. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing by Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you in 2 weeks.